Juan was the best oyster diver in his small seaside village. One day, he found an injured sea otter and nursed it back to health. From the moment the grateful otter was able to walk, it never left Juan's side. It even learned to dive for oysters and to bring his catch back to Juan. Their combined oyster harvest was so successful that he developed a reputation all along the coast. One day, a man arrived at Juan's house looking to hire him for the week. His wife answered the door.
"Sure,"
said his wife.
"It will cost you $500.
"That much?" replied the prospective client.
"But you're getting my husband and his otter,"
explained his wife.
"They can harvest more oysters than anyone else in town."
"I just want one," the man countered. "I'll hire him alone for $350.
"Sorry,"
she shrugged.
"You cannot have one without the otter."
One Sunday morning, the pastor slowly made his way to the rural church in the middle of a blizzard, arriving with just 5 minutes to spare. He walked in, turned on the lights, and looked around. No one else was there. As he was about to turn everything off and go back home, an old farmer walked in covered in snow. The pastor said, "Oh, hello, Bill. Looks like nobody else could make it. I guess we won't have a service today." The old farmer looked at him for a few seconds and said,
"Well, Reverend, I know I'm just an old farmer, but I can tell you this. If I can take a load of hay out to the field and feed my cattle, and only one cow shows up, I still feed it."
The pastor, embarrassed, said, "Of course, you're right. I will go get ready." So the pastor started the service and, being inspired by the farmer's faith and dedication, preached fervently for a full 2 hours. When the service was over, the pastor went over to the farmer and said, "So, Bill, I hope you enjoyed today's sermon." The old farmer looked at him, shook his head, and said,
"Reverend, if I go out to feed the cattle and only one cow shows up, I still feed it. But I sure don't give it the whole frickin' load."
A woman and her husband are at a local restaurant. Even though the woman always seems to find something to complain about, they still regularly visit the restaurant because the food is good and they enjoy the atmosphere. As usual, within minutes of taking their seats, the woman calls over their waiter.
"Waiter,"
she says,
"please turn up the air conditioning. It's much too hot in here."
Minutes later, she asks the waiter to turn down the air conditioning because she's too cold. Soon, she is complaining she's getting too hot again. As their food arrives, the woman is finally silent as she eats her meal. Another customer who is sitting near the couple's table can't help but notice that at no time did the waiter show any anger. In fact, he is surprisingly patient. As the waiter walks past his table, the man calls him over and says quietly,
"I don't know how you put up with that pesky woman over there."
"Oh, it's really no bother at all," replies the waiter. "We don't have an air conditioner." The banker saw his old friend Tom, an 80-year-old rancher, in town. Tom had lost his wife a year or so before, and rumor had it that he was marrying a mail-order bride. Being a good friend, the banker asked Tom if the rumor was true. Tom assured him that it was. The banker then asked Tom the age of his new bride-to-be. Tom proudly said,
"She'll be 21 in November."
Now the banker, being the wise man that he was, could see that a young woman could not be satisfied by an 80-year-old man. Wanting his old friend's remaining years to be happy, the banker tactfully suggested that Tom should consider getting a hired hand to help him out on the ranch, knowing nature would take its own course. Tom thought this was a good idea and said he would look for one that afternoon. About 4 months later, the banker ran into Tom in town again. "How's the new wife?" asked the banker. Tom proudly said,
"Good, she pregnant."
The banker, happy that his sage advice had worked out, continued, "And how's the hired hand?" Tom replied,
"She pregnant too."
A man's 80th birthday is coming up and his friends want to get him a special gift. Considering he has been a widower for many years, and after some discussion, they decide to have an escort come to his house that night and give him the time of his life. Later that evening, as the old man is getting ready for bed, he hears his doorbell ring. As he opens the door, he is shocked to see a beautiful woman standing there in a sexy outfit. The woman says to the senior,
Happy birthday!
Taken aback, the old man replies,
Thank you, young lady. What can I do for you?
The woman says,
Your friend sent me as a gift. I'm here to give you super sex.
The old man thinks about her offer for a moment, then replies,
I'll take the soup.
Andrew is struggling through a bus station with two huge and obviously heavy suitcases, when a stranger walks up to him and asks, Have you got the time? Andrew sighs, puts down the suitcases, and glances at his wrist. It's 5:45, he says. Hey, that's a pretty fancy watch, exclaims the stranger. Andrew brightens up a little bit. Yeah, it's not bad. Check this out. He shows him a time zone display, not just for every time zone in the world, but for the 50 largest cities in the world. He hits a few buttons, and from somewhere on the watch, a voice says,
The time is 11:06.
in a very West Texas accent. A few more buttons, and the same voice says something in Japanese. Andrew continues, I've put in regional accents for each city. The display is unbelievably high quality, and the voice is simply astounding. The stranger is dumbstruck with admiration. That's not all, says Andrew. He pushes a few more buttons, and a tiny but very high-resolution map of New York City appears on the display. The flashing dot shows our location by satellite positioning, explains Andrew. View, recede 10, he says, and the display changes to show eastern New York State. The stranger eagerly says, I'll give you $1,000 for it. Oh no, I've already spent more than... I'll give you $5,000 for it. But it's just not... I'll give you $15,000 for it. And the stranger pulls out a checkbook. Andrew stops to think. He's only put about $8,500 into materials and development. And with $15,000, he can make another one and have it ready for merchandising in only 6 months. The stranger frantically finishes writing the check and waves it in front of him. Here it is, $15,000. Take it or leave it. Andrew abruptly makes his decision. Okay, he says and peels off the watch. They make the exchange and the stranger starts happily away. Hey, wait a minute. Andrew points to the 2 huge suitcases he'd been trying to wrestle through the bus station. Don't forget your batteries! A Texan walks into a bar in Ireland. He clears his voice to address the crowd of drinkers and says, I hear you Irish are damn good drinkers. I'll bet 500 American dollars there's nobody in here who can drink 10 pints of Guinness back to back. The room is quiet and not one patron takes up the Texan's offer. One man even leaves the bar. 30 minutes later, the same man who left earlier returns and taps the Texan on the shoulder. Is your bet still good? Asks the Irishman. The Texan says, Sure it is! Bartender, get this man his drinks! The bartender lines up 10 pints of Guinness on the bar. Immediately, the Irishman tears into the pint glasses, drinking them all back to back. The other patrons cheer as the Texan watches in amazement. The Texan gives the Irishman his money and says, If you don't mind me asking, where'd you go when you left here earlier? The Irishman replies, Oh, I just went to the pub down the street. To see if I could do it first. An elderly couple has just settled down for bed when the old man realizes he left the lights on in the greenhouse in the backyard. Then they hear voices. 3 men have broken into the greenhouse. Frightened, they call the police. The dispatcher tells them that he will send an officer over just as soon as one becomes available, as they are all out on calls. The old man waits for a few minutes, and then calls dispatch again. He tells dispatch, "Don't worry about sending an officer. I shot the robbers, and now the dogs are eating their bodies." In no time at all, police surround the house and capture the robbers red-handed. One of the cops asks the old man, "I thought you said you shot the robber and your dogs were eating them." The old man replies, "I thought you said there weren't any officers available." Jack walked into a sports bar around 9:58 p.m. He sat down next to this blonde at the bar and stared up at the TV as the 10 o'clock news came on. The news crew was covering a story of a man on a ledge of a large building preparing to jump. The blonde looked at Jack and said,
Do you think he'll jump?
Jack says, "You know what? I bet he will." The blonde replied,
Well, I bet he won't.
Jack placed $30 on the bar and said, "You're on." Just as the blonde placed her money on the bar, the guy did a swan dive off the building, falling to his death. The blonde was very upset and handed her $30 to Jack, saying,
Fair's fair. Here's your money.
Jack replied,
I can't take your money. I saw this earlier on the 5 o'clock news and knew he would jump.
The blonde replies,
I did too. But I didn't think he'd do it again.
Little Johnny and two other boys are at confession. The priest asks the first boy,
"What sin did you commit?"
The boy replies,
I stole some candy from the store.
The priest responds,
"Drink this holy water, and your sin will be forgiven."
So the boy drinks the water and stands to the side. The priest then asks the second boy,
"What sin did you commit?"
The boy replies,
I cheated on my exam.
The priest responds,
"Drink this holy water, and your sin will be forgiven."
The boy drinks the water and stands to the side. The priest looks over at little Johnny, who seems very nervous at this point. The priest says,
"Why are you so nervous, Johnny? What sin did you commit?"
Little Johnny stammers,
Well, you see, Father, I peed in the holy water.
A boy returns home after running an errand for his grandfather.
Grandpa,
Says the boy,
I got all the groceries you wanted. Altogether, it came to $47.22. Here's your change.
His grandfather shakes his head and says,
My goodness, the world sure is expensive nowadays. When I was a boy your age, I could get 5 pounds of potatoes, 3 loaves of bread, 2 pounds of beef, a jug of milk, a tin of tobacco from my dad, and a handful of my favorite candies, all for about 5 cents. Can't do that today, though. No siree, Bob.
Why is that, Grandpa?
asks the boy. The grandfather replies,
Too many damn cameras!
A man rents a room and pays extra on the condition that the landlady prepare his work lunch every day. So, on the first day, she packs him a sandwich on normal sandwich bread using the prior night's leftover meatloaf, adding in some fruit and a bottle of soda. When he comes home, he politely tells her that it wasn't quite enough food for him. The next day, she makes 2 sandwiches, turkey this time, and adds a container of potato salad, some crackers and peanut butter, and a slice of cake. That night, he told her most apologetically that while the food was delicious, he found himself still hungry and could she possibly put in a little more the next day. The next day, she uses long slices of sourdough bread to construct a pair of huge sandwiches. She includes crackers and peanut butter, chips and dip, veggies and ranch dressing, and a whole 2-liter of soda. That night, he smiles very kindly and tells her it was almost enough food. The following day, throwing caution to the wind and idly wondering if she's feeding his entire workplace, she cuts a loaf of bread in half and stuffs it with pounds of meat and cheese, an entire head of lettuce, tomatoes, onions, other vegetables, and sauces. Everything. That night, he gives her a dry look and says, "So, I see we're back down to one sandwich.